Hi, yeah, my name's Ashton, and I've reviewed a good amount of board games here at the Shelfside channel. Dice rolling is such a common thing. You've definitely seen it in anything from craps at a casino, all the way to the classic Monopoly. But what's been really cool is how the basic idea of rolling a die can be expanded to so many things in board games, also known as tabletop games. So this should be super exciting, and no matter your expertise in playing games, I'm in good faith you'll end this video with some new ideas on dice rolling. Hey Benjamin, how's it going?
Hi, I'm good.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I'm gonna bring out this coin right here. This is just a normal coin, right?
Yeah?
So yeah, go ahead and toss this in the air.
I got a face.
So when you just threw that in the air, you weren't sure whether it was gonna be one side or the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got it. So let's just bring out this die now. So this has 6 sides instead of 2. So yeah, go ahead and try to roll it. So you see how it could have been any 6 of those options, but it just decided to be that one? Also, we have this coin, right, that you just flipped. It could have been either one of these options, but when you flipped it, it landed on just one. So now let's try something. I'm gonna put this tape on this die. Let's say we put it on this face right here. And then I'm also gonna put tape on this coin right here. Let's say we're playing a game between us and it's your turn and you get to choose one of these to flip or toss to get the side with the tape. If you get the side with the tape, you win the game. So which one do you want to choose?
The coin.
Awesome, yeah, and why is that?
Because it's less sides that are not the tape.
Exactly, and since you only have one try to get the tape, you really want to increase your chance of getting it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool, yeah, this is something called probability, where you just maximize your chance of getting a good result. Yeah, here, take this die and just give it a good roll. Oh, dang, Benjamin, first try, that's really cool. So, you know what, when you were rolling it, right, when it was in the air, you didn't know what outcome it would have exactly, so you felt kind of excited inside, right?
Yeah, I didn't really know what would happen.
Yeah, and when you take this dice rolling and you put it in a bigger game like these, that's when dice rolling can get really exciting. So yeah, thank you, Benjamin. Awesome. So I'm sure you've played this guy, Monopoly, before?
Yeah, I've definitely played Monopoly a lot.
Yeah, so remember like Monopoly, at the beginning of your turn, you take 2 dice and then you roll them and then you see what it has and then you move your little pawn, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like an older approach to dice rolling. And nowadays, there's actually ways to roll dice like in the middle of your turn. So say you're playing this game, right? It's called Hero Quest, where you're this big guy attacking these orcs and goblins.
Yep.
So say you attack this goblin, then you roll the dice to see whether or not you actually attack it.
Oh yeah, it's a lot like that Dungeons and Dragons game I've heard about, right? It's roll for skill check.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same sort of idea. You just pick what to do and then see if it happens. This adds a whole nother layer of depth besides just, oh, I have to pick up the dice at the beginning of every turn and I have to roll it, right?
Interesting.
So something also fun is the types of dice used in a game. So let's bring out something like this, right?
Yo.
It has 20 sides to it.
That's sick.
And then that has 20, but then this has 6 sides, right? So it's called a D6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So D20.
Exactly, D20. So
Okay.
yeah, when you just rolled it there, there's a 1 in 20 chance of getting whatever outcome, right? So you rolled a 14, there's a 1 in 20 chance of getting a 14. If I roll it again, 1 in 20 chance of getting a 7.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you're really changing the odds with this one.
Yeah, so let's go back to Monopoly, right? So you're rolling 2 dice at the same time, and then you're adding them. So that actually changes the outcomes, right? Because you're adding 2 different dice. So perfect result, 7, right? Very likely, a 4 and a 3. Or you could have a 4 and then another 3, right? There's a lot of ways to make 7 with 2 dice. You could have a 1 and a 6.
5 and a 2.
5 and a 2,
that
exactly,
makes sense.
yeah. But then say you want to roll a 12, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's only one way to get 12. Let's see.
Gotcha,
6 and a 6,
gotcha.
yeah. Or
Okay.
like, you know, they call snake eyes in Monopoly, right?
Yeah.
1 and a 1. Yeah, so that is very unlikely, right? Only one possible way.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, back to the d20, right? Where it's a 1 in 20 chance you're only rolling this by itself. So, you know, anything could happen with equal chance.
Okay.
And that's because this game, Dungeons and Dragons, wants to have more extreme results because it's about cool storytelling moments, right?
Okay.
It's about, oh, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I could roll a 1, which is an epic disaster in the game, or you could
Okay.
roll a 20.
Which is really good, I guess.
Really good. Yeah.
Okay.
So say I'm surrounded by a bunch of bad guys, right? And then, oh, maybe I could get out. Just need to roll like a 19 or a 20, and then I end up rolling. Okay, that's pretty good. Say I roll a 20, right? Yeah. And then you can invent some story as a group to.
Oh, like the bad guys actually found the wrong guy.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. So there's different sorts of dice and different ways to control them.
Okay.
How about like this game? It's like this spooky haunted house game called Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Okay.
And this has these d6s, right? 6-sided dice. But there's a lot of blanks and copies of ones, right? So there's ones, it's another
that messes
one.
with the probability.
There's a 2. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's really cool because this game is like custom printed, right? So when you're rolling dice, it's still 6 sides, but the expectations are totally different.
Like there you got snake eyes, whereas rolling these two and getting a snake eyes is really unlikely.
It's really unlikely. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Hey man, yeah, so something I've always appreciated is when games have input randomness with dice. Have you ever played, say, War of the Ring? You know, I am just a big Lord of the Rings fan, but I never got around to it. But what's input randomness? Ah, right, so input randomness, let's say like for dice, that you roll a die, and then off of that roll, you get to decide what to do. Yeah, so if we go to War of the Ring, well, you have these action dice you roll at the beginning of a round. So let's say I roll the dice. Oh. And then, so we have these results, and each of these correspond to an action I can do during each of the turns. So let's just say I have this result here, that this can let me draw a card, or I could have used it to play a card from my hand. That sounds really similar to a game I like called Ashes Reborn, where you roll this mana dice at the beginning of a round, and then you can change that mana by paying stuff. Yep, great example. Just like Ashes, War of the Ring lets you change your die faces, but of course, at a cost. See, there is this big decision making where you have your die result and you're going, well, I could change one of the faces to something else, but that would involve me spending something, or in War of the Rings case, these once per game elven rings. So maybe I'll just stick with this result I have right now, or maybe I'll change it. And that's really cool decision making. When people normally say they don't like dice rolling games, they're referring to the opposite of input randomness, which is output randomness, which is say you want to do something in a game, normally attack someone, and then you roll the dice and then see what happens based off the result. Okay, but then there's games that have output randomness, but then don't feel like slogs. I'm sure you've heard of or played this game by now, Twilight Imperium 4, right? Yes, yeah, I love TI4. This dice rolling doesn't really feel too much of a slog because the game has so many ingredients around and in the dice rolling itself. So first, the combat in TI4 is something you're not always doing because, well, killing your enemies is not the goal of the game. So whenever people do fight on the board, it's less of a chore and more of a cool pivotal thing. And then when you're actually making these dice rolls, well, this is connected to so many things in the game, right? So you have your action cards that you might have in your hand that are secret that you could change the die results, or you could say, oh, I want to retreat after combat, right? And that's a decision you have to make. And of course, you know what makes TI, where you have these alien special abilities. So you could say, oh, I'm just gonna use my special ability right here during combat. Sometimes games choose to omit dice, which is really fun to think about on its own. What about this pretty combat-centric game called Quartermaster General World War II, where kind of like TI4, you're often fighting for control of certain territories. But again, this game doesn't have dice. How does that work? This one is fun to analyze because every time you do a combat, you just play the combat card from your hand and your opponent's unit just dies, just like that. Bam. All the randomness inside combat has been shifted outside of combat in that planning with your hand and that almost deck management, because you only have so many copies of combat cards. Since these cards are hidden in your hand, well, there's a bluffing element where your opponent doesn't quite know you have a bad hand or what you're capable of playing against them. What if you don't like dice rolling or card drawing? Well, there are zero luck games like Gaia Project, or you could just play something like chess or checkers. There's a lot of options, really. I want to play my older games and just see how I feel.
Okay, well, let's first of all establish, why are you even putting dice rolling in your game?
Okay.
All right, like you have to be very intentional with your design choices, right? So what purpose does introducing randomness cause to your game, right? Randomness is a very good tool for building tension, right? For forcing players to think on the fly, to otherwise just create game states in which, like, you can't just account for everything just by looking at it all and being like, I know the perfect optimal play. Dice are there to be like, okay, I need to kind of feel it out, right? You need to have that like poker feeling of just being like, okay, I think that this is the optimal line of play. All right, this is the play that has the highest chance of getting me to win.
Yeah.
You know, oftentimes they'll create game states in which, yes, there's that one play where it's like the highest chance of winning. All right. Or like maybe it's the highest chance of like being the safe play. Like, oh, this play has like a 70% chance of putting me in a pretty good spot. But then sometimes you have to weigh that against, oh, I can do the play that has like a 30% chance of just winning the game on the spot, or I just lose instantly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of board game designers, they are a little too fascinated with using all 6 numbers on this, okay? That is a lot of variance for games in which you are rolling the dice a lot, okay? Like, I don't see why there aren't more games like Betrayal at House Hill where it's like, oh, there's just 0s, 1s, and 2s on it, right? Then you can keep it way more constrained, right? I think what a lot of people really hate in RNG is just like how swingy it can be, which, I mean, if that's what you're trying to do, sure, all right? Like, that can cause very interesting, funny stories, funny gameplay moments, very like hype things to happen. Which is funny because you think in Betrayal they would have that, but they don't. But
Well, they have items that allow that, right? Like dark dice. Yeah.
Okay, unless the numbers are already really big, like say, for an example, in Sons of Anarchy, right? It's pretty easy to be fighting on power levels that are like 10 and above. At which point, rolling a d6 isn't actually as swing as you would think it would be, right? Because on average, you're rolling 3s and 4s, right? But if the numbers were lower, people were fighting on average, like, yeah, like our unit's strength in total is like 5 or something, right? Then this would be insanely swingy. Okay, I mean, it still is decently swingy because it's still possible someone could roll 1 in a 6,
Yeah.
but it doesn't normally happen, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also like your temperance on like luck, right? Do you enjoy the wackiness and the swinginess of games? Do you like it when in Catan someone rolls a 2 or a 12 like 2 times in a row? Some people might like that. Where like Gloomhaven, no dice at all, right? Because Isaac Childress hates dice. Yeah.
Which is funny because in Gloomhaven, the attack modifier deck is swingier than dice because of the existence of the crits and misses, and also how you can build the deck.
It is, but because it's a deck that you're building, right? You're flipping over cards get removed, then you can be like, oh, this result is literally impossible, right? Because it's already been flipped. So I think that's the beauty of having a deck.
This is true. This is true. I mean, this will matter more in Frosthaven because in Gloomhaven, the perk deck is a lot less interesting because a lot of the times when you're upgrading, it's just raw number stuff. Right, because there will be more cards later that are like, oh, this is gonna do something insane when I flip it. But most of the time in Gloomhaven, it's just like, oh, this is like a +1 plus like poison or something. I don't know, right? You're not really keeping track of that. In Gloomhaven, all you care about is the crit and the miss. That's all you're tracking. And those cause a deck to reshuffle, which is why I'm saying like, oh, it's not really a thing where it's like, oh, I know it's been flipped. I can account for it. It's like, no, once it's flipped, it just gets reshuffled. So
okay. my problem with decks is that they can make the game like a little too fiddly, right? It's like Gloomhaven, right?
I hate shuffling.
There's so many decks. There's so much shuffling. Whereas like a die, it's like, oh, this is literally just one thing. I take it out of the box. I roll it. It's done. That's
I 100% would prefer to Gloomhaven had like a D12 or D20. You just put stickers on it.
Yeah,
like, that would have been beautiful. I mean,
that's expensive.
The problem is, that's expensive. Yeah. But 2, they would have to rework how curses and blast works, which I do think is actually legitimately cool use of the deck because you can shuffle in more crits and misses, which is hilarious.
Yeah, whereas like a dice, when you're playing a game, you can't really just modify it on the fly.
Exactly. So I do respect. I mean, that was, even though I'm like personally not the biggest fan of that, like it is very much designed with intention. It works with the game very well,
For TI4, right, it's really cool because you have a bunch of units that all roll certain amounts, right? Some hits on 9, some hits on 7. So there's like something online called TI4calculator.com where you can build your army perfectly and be like, oh, I have a percentage chance of like this army of like 4 dreadnoughts, 2 fighters winning against 1 war sun. So you can do that perfectly. It's really cool because it's all probability.
Oh,
but
yeah.
if it's just a deck of cards, maybe it's not. You can't.
There
do
is
that
a
as
Gloomhaven
easily.
deck builder thing, by the way. For
Okay,
everyone.
yeah.
People would use that to be like, no, here's how I optimize which perks I take in what order, right? Like,
Yeah.
but on the back, on top of your TI4,
Yeah.
another thing I respect about it is just how much dice you're rolling, right? And like, you would think that, like, because I know there's like a constant like board game snob. It's like, oh, in America, all you do is roll dice, and you roll more dice, and those dice cause you to roll more dice.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, wouldn't that be a good thing, all right? Not if the outcomes of the dice. Like, if it's literally all, like, what do you call it, output randomness on that, like, and it's swingy, then, like, sure, that's bad for constantly rolling dice. But in games where, like, it's not that swingy when you're rolling on the dice, that's a good thing, because now you're averaging out the result. Like, the more dice you roll, the closer you're getting to that bell curve where you're going to be within, you know, the middle section of it, right? In a game where if there's like really swingy dice roll results and you're rolling the dice only a few times,
Yeah.
you're gonna feel that like crazy if there's outliers.
Yeah, like Dead of Winter, right? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Nowadays, right, we have all this knowledge, we have all these new presumptions about what board games can and should be. And so with that newfound knowledge, right, it's just up to designers to be like, how do I want to use dice in my games? Usually games that have dice in them are using them pretty well. They're not using them as like a means of just being like, all right, well, when you fight, it's just uncontrollable. Who knows what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
It's usually, no, it's just there so you don't just literally compute everyone to death and just, you know, win every time, right? It's usually just like, all right, the dice are there, play around the dice.
Thanks for watching, and if you want to see the extended version of me talking to Daniel, check out our Patreon in the description below. Also, any ideas on this format or what topics you want me to cover, I'd be all ears, so comment below, I read everything. Anyways, thanks to our patrons, again. We got Manuel G, Brian C, Clifford H, Aaron W, Max B, Bora, Jeremy MC, Charlie B, Quinton, SMS, Travis, Everyone Wiley, Vom TK, Ryan D, Jennifer L, Matt G, Piers Smear 1, Ryan J, Brad G, Tiamo Period, Mark A, James M, Evan B, Charles P Jr., Josh J, Bassmore Rado, Sophie, Ryan Z, Cole Allen, Hudson T, Pearson B, Omar F, MY, Ethan P, Bradley J, John T, Galvin V, Dark S, SS Co, Alex L, Rob R, 722, Dave F, Josh R, Pat, Joel C, Ilwayne, Kyle M, Amir H, Wildlife Spin, Keanu S, Alma Books, Kyle C, John C, Nicholas R, Robin, and Andre. We also got our 3 MacLeod's cardboard. We got ZL, Jeff L, and Peter Z, and we got that guy right there. We also got our Mad Lady cardboard. We got Amy. That was 4 levels of explanation. It's fun to make. I want to see where this thing goes if we make more of them. Anyways, remember to like, comment, subscribe. See you later. Bye-bye.